I imagine that we've all had the experience of being outside a set of closed doors when we are waiting for them to open because there is a meal. Maybe it's at a conference and the doors are closed and everyone is standing outside in the lobby waiting to go in, and when the doors open, everybody rushes to get their seat. Or maybe it's some special event that's going on, but we all have had or know of that kind of experience where everyone's standing there. There's a sense of we have to hurry up and we have to get our seat and we have to figure out which seat is ours. I like wedding banquets with assigned seating for that very reason. Or some other kind of event where we have that experience of we need to get a seat. I drive by Arturo's in the evening, and there's always crowds of people standing on the sidewalk waiting to get their seat. I don't think since it's become like that, we've eaten there. Partly it may be my thing. I don't like waiting that long, or I don't know. We tried once to order online or to make a phone call and order for pickup, and they told us it would be 2.5 hours. And so we said, no, we'll find dinner someplace else. Rita could probably cook it faster than that. I can't say we could probably cook it faster than that because she does all the cooking in the house. Sense sometimes of if I don't get there soon enough, I might get left out. Or I might not get a good table. We wait too long to make a reservation for dinner, and all of a sudden, we can't get a table. And there's no place. Now, all of those problems of people of abundance. We have plenty. We have more than enough. What about the people, though, like the folks at the lunch program at Newark Penn Station? When we take 75 lunches, and one of the folks who took the lunches this last month said, for some reason we were the first ones to arrive, and so the 75 lunches went very quickly with a large crowd descending on the table. They were worried, this person's related to me, I was beginning to worry about what would happen when we ran out, when fortunately another group showed up and began to feed or offer lunches. How about that kind of fear and anxiety? Will we have anything to eat at all? Will there be enough? Our reading for today is about those things, I think. I believe that. And the challenge of our reading for today is that to read it, I'm sorry, it's cutting in and out. We're doing our best here. We tend to read it as table manners. Often, it's a challenge because the way it's presented is kind of wisdom sayings about how we should act at the table. But let's back up for a moment to look at this reading and to think about it together. The lectionary skips a bunch of verses, and I get that. The reason they skip a bunch of verses is because they're looking at the big picture, and in the big picture, last week we heard the story of a person who was healed on the Sabbath and what happened and all of the challenges of that. And so this week, there's another story like that. So they skip it and go to the next thing. What's happening is Jesus is invited to the house of a Pharisee, and on the way, everybody's watching everybody to see how they're acting. It's a Sabbath. You know, I know you're watching me, and you know I'm watching you, and you know how those kinds of things can go. I'm watching you, watching me. That's what's happening. And a man with dropsy in need of healing comes, Jesus is watching the leaders, and the leaders are watching Jesus, and what will happen, because they know what happened in the synagogue and how the leader of the synagogue kept on saying to them, you shouldn't do this. You have 6 other days of the week. Don't come on this day. So Jesus asks them, what do you think? Is it legal to heal on the Sabbath or not? Nobody answers, so he heals them. And then they continue to watch each other. Only Jesus is watching everyone now that they are arriving at the party. And as they are arriving at this dinner party, there is the shuffling for seats that we all know so well. Where to sit, even in those good banquets where you have an assigned table, you don't have an assigned seat always, and so everyone is kind of jostling for, well, I want a seat so I don't have to turn my back when the speaker starts to speak. Right? We go through all that. And we can get caught up in Jesus' comments as etiquette. But that's what it's about at all. I really think it's about the reign of God, because the reign of God and the coming of God's reign is often described as a party or a feast or a meal. And so I think one way to read this is metaphorically. I think he comments, first of all, he comments about 2 things. And the first one is about how we come to that party. He gives advice, and he says to them, when you come to a party, don't choose the place of honor. In Greek, the word is the first chair. Don't choose the best seats in case someone who is more important than you comes along, and that person, the host comes and says, would you move down, please? That's not really your seat. I'm sorry. And in front of everyone, you have to move away from that seat and go to a lesser seat. And we could get all caught up in that and see it as advice, except that the Greek is subtly saying something a little different. Because when the Greek talks about that whole movement from the first seat to the lesser seat, and then Jesus suggesting that we come in humility and take a different seat, a lower seat, and then we are moved to a place of honor. The word there is actually a glory, and it's resonating with the glory that we share because of the grace of God. We come to this place not because we deserve it, not because we're the most honorable person in the room. We come because God has invited us, and because in Jesus Christ we are welcome, and because in Jesus Christ we are joint heirs with Christ, and because we are sharing in God's glory by the grace of God. And that's true of everyone who's invited. So we come, not because we deserve it, just because we are a creature of God, called by God. And then he turns to the host, and he offers the host some advice that, again, we can get caught up in the advice part of it and take it literally, but I just think I'm fascinated by reading it more in terms of the reign of God. He says, when you throw a party, don't throw it for your brothers and your sisters and your friends and that rich neighbor. They're not the ones you invite. They're not the ones that are most in need of an invitation. There were all kinds of rules in those days about not only about where you sat and how that all worked out, but also about who you invite to a dinner or to a party. You always, in that society and that day, made sure that everyone you invited was about your social strata in society, about where you were. If you invited someone too much above you, you might owe them, and if you owed them, you might not want to repay what it is they wanted in return. So you didn't do that. And you didn't invite anyone too far below you because that would make them too indebted to you, and they couldn't repay you. Very much a social contract kind of thing. But Jesus says, forget all that. In God's reign, invite those that can't return the favor, the lame, the blind, the crippled, the weak, the hungry. Because at God's table, room for everyone, just like the hymn says and suggests to us, the one we're struggling to learn. The first line, for everyone born a place at the table. And then it unfolds that all through that hymn. Look back at it sometime. Profound words. This, I think, has big social implications if we take it seriously, because we are called to model the reign of God to the world. That's what the church is supposed to be. As I was thinking about all this, I came across an article by Jill Duffield, and Jill introduced me to a book and to some history that I didn't know that happens to relate very well to the Belhar Confession that we've been reading. It's a story of the history of, well, in the technical language, Eucharistic practices, our communion practices, in the Dutch Reformed Church of South Africa. J. Todd Billings wrote it. It's called Union. And in that book, he talks about how for many, many years, the practice in the Dutch Reformed Church was that everyone was to commune together without distinction or notice of color. And then in 1857, they made a change. It was an exception, really. They said, for the sake of the weaker ones, a separate table for people of color, that people of color and whites won't commune together. For the sake of the weaker ones. It was a pastoral act. Now the thing is, that pastoral act became the norm over the years. And that norm became a part of the basis out of which the Dutch Reformed Church developed a theology in support of apartheid. All out of a pastoral act that everyone was not at the table together. And it wasn't until the Belhar Confession that the Dutch Reformed Church made its confession. How far afield they had gone in that journey. So our practices of who's included are profound. They can impact a whole society or a whole nation. They can impact our views and understandings and how we live, not just on Sunday morning, but every day of the week. The challenge of the text is for us in the invitation of the text is for us to be inviting everyone, to recognize that we didn't earn the right to be at this table. We didn't earn the right to be in this room. I didn't earn the right to stand in front of you. It's by grace. It's by God's grace. And if you hear the word, it is by God's Spirit and by God's grace. And because of that, everyone has a place at this table. Those who are weak are welcome at this table. Those who are broken in some way are welcome at this table. Those who have made mistakes and wandered far away are welcome at this table. People of every color and nation and continent are welcome at this table. And we are invited to live into that, to reflect that, to be a place of welcome and openness. Let us pray. Gracious God, open us to the power of your Spirit. Open us to your grace so that we may humbly come into your presence, so that we may be those who stand with you in the presence of all the people that you love, so that we may be witnesses and models of the reign that you proclaim and establish in this world. Amen.